Are we back? I think we're back. We'll see if anyone is in the chat room. Hopefully, we're going, and this is a lot better. I mean, things are looking good so far. I mean, they were looking good before, but I've got 2600 kilobits, no dropped frames. So if anyone in the chat room can let me know, or the Discord. I'm looking at the Discord too.
You're looking a little bit better. Hmm. Yeah, people are saying
Okay,
it's much
John Van
better.
Horn. Okay, yes.
Okay, let's give it another test by just saying random stuff. Hello, mother. Hello, father.
Have you prepared any thoughts on the pandemic? I'm working on it for Sunday's podcast. I'm gonna try to just see what information I can get because there's
And people are still talking about the Boogaloo.
yeah.
You know, I agree with you, Shane. That's a terrible name to give the so-called societal collapse. The Boogaloo. That's not the name of a societal collapse. That's the name of a cheesy 1980s dance.
Actually, it's more like 50s.
Oh,
There's I think the 80s you did like the electric boogaloo, which I think is different, but the boogaloo goes back to like the 50s.
It's
or
electric
60s.
boogie woogie.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I was in kindergarten,
yeah,
they
I've cut this down, by the way, just so everyone knows. I've cut this down to 720p, so you should be maxed out at that. And I dropped it to 24 frames a second. So hopefully that'll give it kind of the juice it needs to do what it's doing. But everything looks good on my end. David R says it sounds good so far. Tiago for in Discord says it looks good now. So maybe it was a good thing redoing it this early so we can have until 10 o'clock. It's 8:44 now, so we can have until 10 o'clock to have a good live stream. We have to kind of get back into it though, because on my end the chat kind of reset itself.
Breaking 2 Electric Boogaloo. No, David. It's Rock 1 2 Electric Avenue. Yeah. We gonna rock Electric Avenue.
It's copyrighted. It's not PD. Please don't take down my channel. I don't even remember what the movie is, but it was something. The sequel was something to Electric Boogaloo, and I think that's the only thing anyone remembers about that movie.
Yeah. By the way, not a lot of people realize this, but Electric Avenue was actually about a race riot that occurred in London. Yeah. It's one of those songs where it has a cheery tune and upbeat, but it's actually about something really dark.
Breakin' 2, is that it? The movie Breakin' 2 Electric Boogaloo, released in the same year as Breakin' 1. Okay, whatever.
Oh, that explains it then. Yeah, if they release the sequel immediately after the first one, that usually means, yeah, the sequel's not going to be any better.
I've heard a lot of
it was
Hollywood.
With Back to the Future 2 and 3, the reason why they were released so quickly, so they were supposed to be the same movie. It was all supposed to be one movie, and Robert Zemeckis was all like, I can't figure this out. He was talking to Steven Spielberg, and he was saying, I can't figure this out. This thing is just becoming overly long, and right in the middle, I'm introducing all these new characters, and we're in a new setting, and Spielberg said, well, it sounds, Bob, like you got two movies there. And so they made 2 and 3 at the same time, or one right after each other or something.
Yeah, I think George Lucas experienced a similar thing with Star Wars. You know, originally he wanted Star Wars to be this really big, you know, almost Ben-Hur-like movie, you know, which would be this epic space drama, but people told him, it's like, look, George, we're over budget, we're over limit, so here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna make A New Hope, you know, so it's a self-contained story, but we'll keep the ending open and vague enough that if it is successful, we'll have a sequel, but that's it. So, because if I recall correctly, the Death Star wasn't supposed to be destroyed until the third movie, but they told him, you know, look, we don't know if this movie's going to succeed.
Well, and also it completely changed in the edit, because he showed it to Steven Spielberg and Brian De Palma, and I think like one or two others, and they were like, this sucks, that is hard. And I think it was De Palma who said, let's get back in the editing booth and reshape all of this, and they moved everything around, and they re-edited, made it a completely different movie.
What, Back to the Future?
No, the Star Wars: A New Hope.
Oh,
I'm
yeah,
gonna
fun
go
fact.
eat. I'm gonna go eat some dinner. I'll be back in a little bit.
Yeah.
I will see you, Vega.
Don't forget to wash your hands.
Tia Gopher says he'll join in a sec, so
Yeah, wash your hands. It's a pretty funny, Shane. You're talking about illnesses and all that. A lot of people fail to realize, like 99% of all common malaises or whatever you pronounce it, it actually could
malaises.
easily be malaises. They could easily be prevented if we just did stuff like that, like just wash your hands and all that.
Yep. There's Tia
Yeah,
Gopher or Tiagopher. I'm not sure how you're pronouncing it, but welcome.
Hi.
How you doing?
Oh, I'm doing. I'm doing great. I really don't care how you pronounce my name.
Okay, that's good because I'll mess it up
It's
anyway.
You're the guy. We'll just
Yeah.
call you the guy. We'll just call you the guy with the weird accent.
Yeah.
You're from.
I thought that was
you're
me.
You're from Greece, right?
Nope. Portugal.
Oh.
Portugal.
Oh.
Like when I made the username, it's meant to be pronounced Tiago Fair, but like no one pronounces it like that, and I've just given up on trying to correct people.
Tiago
Kind of reminds me of when that volcano in Iceland erupted and everyone saw it. It's like in another news, this volcano erupted in Iceland. Yeah, there were a bunch of Icelandic people on YouTube saying, "Okay, here's how you pronounce it."
I forget what it's called, but it's actually not that difficult to pronounce.
Well, yeah, it actually surprisingly isn't. Like once you learn how their vocabulary works, it looks. Apparently, Icelandic is kind of like Welsh in that if you try to literally pronounce it, yeah, it looks weird and confusing. But once you learn how their vowels and other grammar works, it's actually not that bad.
If I recall correctly, like the name of the volcano doesn't even have any weird characters. Like the only weird quote unquote thing about it is that the J's are pronounced like I's. But that's
Kind of reminds me about the Hmong language because the Hmong language looks pretty confusing, but because we learned this in elementary school because we had a lot of Hmong students. As one guy pointed out, the reason why the Hmong language looks so weird is because prior to the Vietnam War, the Hmong language didn't have a written language.
Well, what about
but
Welsh? I mean, because Welsh originally was the runes, but with the way they put it into Latin letters, it looks like someone was typing with their elbows, and there's a lot of double D's and other consonants, and you're like,
Yeah.
"Can I buy a vowel, please?"
Yeah, same thing.
Yep.
Same thing with Russian. I was watching this one Jackie Chan movie one time, and the beginning of it took place in Russia, and he's working for some crime fighting groups who are trying to catch some Russian mafia weapon smugglers, and he's like, okay, I found the place where they're hiding it. Okay, what's it spelled? D-O a backwards N, two K's fused together, an O with a slash through it, stuff like that.
Yeah.
I know with a slash through it. That's not Russian.
Or whatever it was. I don't remember the exact quote, but Russia does have a lot of weird stuff. They have that one letter that looks like a pi symbol.
Yeah, that's their P sound. It's the Cyrillic alphabet. And like that one Billy Joel album where he was live in Russia, people call it, they say, what is it? It's Kolept or something like that. It's actually pronounced concert. And it's the Russian word for, guess what, concert.
Yeah.
But it looks like KOHLEPT, but it's not that.
I heard Billy Joe kind of had a meltdown during that concert because the translators were butchering everything for him, and he couldn't perform because like he was saying one thing, but the translators were saying another, and he's just like, I can't do it.
I don't know. The one they videotaped the live concert was fine.
Yeah.
So it probably depends on the translator he had in that particular concert.
Yeah, here's another fun fact about Soviet tours and all that is that apparently when Bruce Springsteen did a concert in East Germany when he was allowed to, you know what he was shocked to find out? People knew the lyrics of his song before he did, and they were actually singing ahead of him, and he was like, "Wow, they actually know my songs. I thought these people had never even heard of me."
Agora is wondering if it'll be a prime time to get a job once this clears up. I'm not sure, but it's probably a good time to buy stocks in cryptocurrency because they're way down.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to
Oh,
buy some
but Shane, that's
crypto.
insider trading.
How is it insider trade?
I don't know. You know, it's pretty funny. It's pretty funny because you know they have all these rules for insider trading, for insider trading to prevent people from screwing you off. It's like, oh, but he knew something that we didn't know. It's like, so what?
But fun fact, that's not illegal. Congress never passed any laws. The laws that Congress passed about insider trading was that, like, if you were an executive at a company and you sold information about a coming merger or announcement or something to someone who wasn't supposed to have it, and that's what they meant by insider trading. The SEC has meant, oh, well, you had this information, you didn't give it to someone else, but you bought or sold stocks based on it. Well, of course they did.
Yeah, many people have pointed out that that's how stocks work. You know,
Yeah.
that's how they work. You know,
That's how
It's
you
like
get
you're not-
information into the price. That's the whole point.
Yeah. And I've actually heard when they started enforcing a lot of those taxes, they started enforcing a lot of that insider trading to actually cause the market to crash because nobody knew what was going to happen. Because it's like, well, what's going to happen? Are the stocks going to go up and down? I can't tell you that. It's illegal. We have to wait till it actually happens. So people weren't investing. It's so funny. The government passes all these laws and then they're like, oh, why aren't people investing?
Mm-hmm.
We passed all these rules and regulations to make the trading more fair, but people aren't trading. Well, yeah, because they don't want to risk it anymore.
Well, and it's like you've got the Fed, pushing interest rates down to almost zero, and then the government goes, well, why aren't people saving? Well, because they're not idiots. They know the inflation rate is higher than the interest rate.
Yeah, it also reminds me when Mystic Jojo told me that the area in his area is trying to make harder to evict people. And I'm like, oh yeah, they're implementing rent control, all these zoning laws, and now they're saying, oh yeah, you can't evict people either. And they're wondering why, how come nobody's building any houses or apartments?
'Tis a puzzlement.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like, it's like that one episode of SpongeBob where Mr. Krabs, he's so cheap, he doesn't want to waste a single product, and he's trying to make customers eat a really rancid burger and all that, and people catch on to it and they don't come to his store, and he's like, how come I'm not getting new customers? I wonder if it's the new placemats.
Agora Supreme, I honestly don't know how the state's going to actually siphon revenue when most people are just trying to keep their lives together. Well, that's what they don't realize. They should realize that they're much better off in a prosperous economy where they're not doing crap like that.
Oh, Travis,
but they're too short-sighted to see that. What was that, Chris?
Travis Retriever sent me something. I was telling him about my scenario, and he's like, well, you know what, Chris, if the coronavirus does end up causing you to lose your job because they force, Domino's to shut down, just do this. And they showed me a video of Eric Idle singing, always look on the bright side of life. Yeah. Yeah. That's actually a very common thing that people in England will do. Like if their favorite, sports team is losing, they'll start singing, look at the bright side of life. Yeah. Yeah, I've seen clips of that, and it is a pretty funny movie. It's like, because I want to be a woman, but you can't have children. Well, who are you to say that? I'm saying it's biologically impossible. You don't have a uterus. Okay. Yeah, it's like, okay, well, here's the deal. We'll acknowledge that he doesn't have the right that he can't have a child because he can't physically have it, but we're still going to advocate that he has the right to want to have a kid. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I know. Yeah. Yeah, that's why I hate the SJW movement, because I think you've pointed this out before. The sad truth is that people are saying, well, it's not fair, that people, are more, have all this money and all that. Well, you know what? It's not fair that Brad Pitt looks prettier than me.
Can you hear me now?
People
in the chat are saying they can't hear me.
You did kind of cut out a little bit, but I can hear you now.
Okay.
Yes,
I was just quoting Monty Python. I think that's all you missed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like, it's like, yeah, it is true. There are some guys who are smarter and more determined to work harder than me, but guess what? Brad Pitt's also prettier than me. Should we scar him so he'll be just as ugly as me?
Are they? Can you still not hear me, or is the okay? I think the chat was just
now
lagging.
they can hear you.
Yeah, the chat must be lagging.
It's just
Yeah. What was I saying just before that happened? I was going to say something. Oh yeah, Life of Brian. Another great moral from that movie wasn't so much from the movie itself, but from the audience reaction, because everyone's saying, "Oh no, you're not supposed to say words like that," when the movement was to try to get everyone to say them to take away the power. And so there's this one part where his mother tries to tell him, you're not Jewish, you're Roman. He's like, "No, I'm Jewish. I always will be." And he starts writing out all these epithets for Jewish. I'm a kike, I'm a yid, I'm all this, I'm that, everything else. And then he says, "And proud of it," and storms away. And what they were going for was humor like what they had done before with the cheese shop or the dead parrot, where you just keep rattling things out. And they're expecting it to be funny. Instead, the audience cheered because they loved the fact that he was so proud to be Jewish that he happily accepted all these epithets. If these things mean Jewish, then that's what I am. That's how you stop the hate behind racial epithets. But you don't do like what black people did with the N-word and say, "Well, we can say it, but white people can't." That's defeating the purpose.
Yeah, Paul Joseph Watson actually had up a pretty good point, because he had a response, for those questions. It was called "Questions White People Have for Black People," and he's like, so if only black people are allowed to call each other N-words, does that mean only white people are allowed to call each other crackers?
Or honkies, or
Yeah. Yeah, I wouldn't actually do it, but next time, I see, maybe I should do that, see how they like it. If a black person says, "Oh yeah, them all crazy crackers," I should go up and say, "Hey, you can't use that. That only we can use that, man. Come on, man."
I get that from people. That's like, there aren't any hate words against white people. It's like, excuse me, I grew up in the South. I can tell you all of them.
Oh yeah.
And even for like different subsets of white people, because you got the Wops and you got the Dagos and all of those, the Limeys.
And the funny irony is that a lot of those racist terms for white people were invented by other white people.
Yeah.
Redneck. Yeah, redneck was a racist slang term that WASP invented to make fun of Catholics.
Yep.
Because they weren't used, to the heat and the humidity, so they would sunburn easily.
Back when they were keeping Irish as slaves and trying to make them work on farms, yeah.
Oh, Shane, Irish and Germans weren't enslaved; they were indentured servants. Yeah. I hate it when people try to say that. They try to justify it. It's like, no, it's slavery.
Yeah, it is. You're claiming ownership on someone. You're forcing them to work whether they want to or not. That's slavery. Rainbow Asteroids talks about Morgan Freeman. Morgan Freeman said something that I really liked, and I forget exactly how it went. So look for the video. But he was like, "Don't call me black. Don't call me African American. Don't call me this or that. Call me Morgan Freeman."
Yeah,
because that's who I am.
And he also hated the concept of Black History Month. He's like, "Well, why?" It's like, because it's not Black history. That's American history.
Yeah.
The Civil War, Emancipation Proclamation, and all that. That's all American history. It's not Black history. It's American history, because white people and others were affected too by it. Which is true. It's American history. I think that's the reason why a lot of people, are starting to hate on Black History Month. It's not because they're racist. It's just because it's like, it's elitism. It's like,
yeah.
And not to mention, and many people have pointed out, there's many smart, and creative black people out there, and we're celebrating them for the color of their skin instead of what they're actually doing, because it's like, oh, did you know there was this one guy who conducted this revolutionary medicine and he was black? Okay, so what? He was black. Why are we caring about the fact that he's black and not the fact that he discovered a brand new type of medicine that revolutionized the medical field?
Isn't it a racist insult to black people to act like there's something special about that? Oh, here's a black guy who's actually smart. Duh, that never happens. I mean, come on. No.
Yeah. Yeah, it reminds me of that BuzzFeed video. They're like, "Why do you insist on being colorblind?" Because that's how you don't be racist.
Yeah.
Because if you don't give two craps about the color of a person's skin, you can't be a racist because you don't care.
Well, if you're white, you're automatically racist, and there's nothing you can do about it. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and I still want to ask BuzzFeed, what privilege do I have? Because I took your freaking quiz, your freaking quiz, and even with all the points I got for just being a white guy, I was still like, I think it was like 36, which was not privileged.
We pretty much all took it, and all of us white guys were in the 30s, and Charles was in the 40s, and he's black, and he scored higher privilege than we did. Charles Thomas. Hey Pip, how you doing?
It's our favorite ANCAP from the land down under.
Down under.
Where women glow and men plunder.
We're watching Eureka on Amazon Prime because Heather's never seen it. I hadn't seen it since its original one, but it's got Matt Frua doing the Australian accent, and it's pretty bad.
Fun fact about that song and copyright. Apparently, men at work were sued by the Australian education system because apparently they claimed, oh, that flute thing in there, it sounds too much like the Kookaburra song, which is copyrighted, and they wanted to know, well, where's the copyright? And they were like, it's somewhere. I don't have time to look for it, but it's in there.
There's something interesting that happened. I haven't reported on it in the podcast because I'm waiting to see if there's anything that can actually be done about it or if it's just completely bogus. But these guys have taken, I think it's like 2 measures. They've made 2 measures of like different, beats and rhythms and pitches, and they had a computer go through and make just every single combination of them. So every 2 measure rhythm and melody that could possibly exist is what they've generated, and they're claiming to have created it, which means that they've released all this in the public domain, which means that no one else can copyright any other melody ever because it will be in these ones that they've generated on the computer.
Well, yeah, Shane, I remember a very, very long time ago in one of your really older videos, you were talking about pareidolia and how people were thinking, we saw a cross here, that means that person must have been religious, but no, crosses are easy. Well, I've heard the same thing applies to music because it turns out a lot of tunes out there, they're very easy to mimic, even if you've never heard a similar tune before. So, yeah.
Is copyright even necessary, Shane? Is that something we should just get rid of?
Get rid of it. Why do you think from the neoclassical period there's so much stuff from German composers, Beethoven, Mozart, and all of them, and so few from Britain? Because Britain had pretty strong copyrights for compositions. Germany didn't have copyright. Beethoven couldn't copyright his symphonies. Mozart couldn't copyright his symphonies. They had to keep cranking out symphonies and sonatas and everything.
Yeah,
because they couldn't just lie on their laurels.
Yeah, if I recall correctly, Charles Dickens, he was red-pilled about copyright because beforehand he used to hate, America because it's like, oh, they don't have enough copyright laws and people are buying all my books without giving me a single credit. And he was shocked to find out that when he went through on tour, more people in the United States had heard about him than they did in his native England.
Well, not only that, they were poor people, which is the audience he was trying to reach.
Yeah, he was... Yeah, he was shocked, because at the height of his career, the majority of British people, if you talk to them about how, oh, did you hear about Charles Dickens? His new book came out. They'd be like, who the bloody hell is Charles Dickens? But in America, everyone knew about him because his books were easily available.
Dickens was something you read if you were someone with what if you're a snooty, if you were posh, that's what you did, and that wasn't the audience he was trying to reach.
Yeah. Yeah, and actually, if I recall, that's the funny irony is that, in class, in our high school classes, we would always have to read these books and overanalyze them. But yet, if you look at why the authors wrote them in the first place, it's not supposed to be thought like that.
Not only could Shakespeare not have copyrighted Hamlet and Romeo and Juliet, but if there were copyrights, he couldn't have done it because those stories existed already. He took someone else's material and turned it into a play.
So, what do you say about the complaint that if there was no copyright, people wouldn't make money on their stuff because some big company will just come in and steal it and then sell it for,
That's what's
for their
happening
own
with
profit?
copyright.
Yeah.
In fact,
And here's
that's
the
the
thing-
whole idea of copyright. If you look at
And
go to the Copy Me channel on YouTube, they've got a good video on the history of copyright. Going back to the Statute of Anne and how the whole idea was to wrest control of it away from authors and give it to publishers. And look at the music industry. That's exactly what's happening. Music artists are
yeah.
getting crap, and the labels are raking it in.
Yeah, and I was about to say this, Shane. What was I gonna say? Ah, crap! I lost my train of thought.
Happens to me all the time,
Yeah.
Darth.
Oh, I was actually gonna respond to someone in the chat. Someone said Star Wars and Fallout are both now garbage because of IP. Well, yeah, the reason why Star Wars ended up the way it did, especially the new trilogy, is because of the Disney IP address. There are fan, things out there that are trying to make, fan-made shows based off of the original expanded universe, but the reason why we don't hear about them is because Disney comes around saying, "Hey, we own that now."
They did that. There was a fan attempt to make a Star Trek movie that looked like it was going to be pretty good. A few years ago, Paramount came in and basically sued them out of existence. And they were saying in court, they were saying, look, you can copyright scripts, but you can't copyright vague ideas like starships and Starfleet, because I don't even think they were doing like Captain Kirk and Mr. Spock. I think they were doing like their own ship and characters and Paramount in the Star Trek universe, and Paramount still went in to shut them down.
Yeah, copyright is just bullcrap, and yeah, going back to the thing about Land Down Under, yeah, if I recall correctly, even the copyright that they said because of the Kookaburra song, they couldn't find it, and basically they did what the mayor did in the live action Grinch movie when he said, "Oh, the Grinch can't attend, the festival." It's like, why not? Well, the book is really long and boring, and it would be tough to explain but it's in there. I feel like that's
Rainbow
all a lot of laws.
Rainbow Asteroid says Steel. It was Igor Stravinsky who said that poor composers imitate good composers steal.
Yeah.
That's what you do. That's part of the creative process. You take some, because like Shakespeare, like I said, took Hamlet from someone else and made it great. Well, where do you think The Lion King is from? That's Hamlet with animals, but they did their own take on it and they made a really good movie.
Yeah, and and we see this with plenty of classic movies. Like going back to Star Wars, George Lucas flat out said Star Wars was inspired by Flash Gordon and a lot of what was that Japanese guy's name? He wrote a lot of samurai movies. Kurosawa something was based off of Kurosawa.
I know Piers Anthony was a big inspiration, he said.
Yep, and Indiana Jones, not a lot of people realize Indiana Jones was based off of James Bond. Only instead of a spy, he was an archaeologist. And when you look at it, a lot of the stuff that Indy went through is very similar to what James Bond went through.
Well, and basically every James Bond villain is Moriarty,
Oh, yeah. Yeah, like Blofeld. Yeah, like Blofeld and the cat. Yep.
Yeah.
Actually, if I recall correctly, the stereotype that, you don't see the villain until you get the big reveal. I think that was in the original Sherlock Holmes where they talked about Moriarty, but they never showed him or described him until he finally came face to face with Sherlock Holmes.
He built it up to where, Watson was talking about, because Watson is writing this retrospectively, talking about the one man who could defeat Sherlock Holmes and who actually did. It was actually Doyle's intention to kill off Sherlock Holmes, and in the series with that story, everyone wanted more, so he said, okay, Sherlock faked his death and did some more. But yeah, that was his whole purpose for introducing Moriarty, was to make someone who could finally defeat Sherlock Holmes. But I mean, he broke every rule of the villain, because Moriarty didn't cackle evilly and twirl his mustache or something like that. He was a proper gentleman.
Yeah. Yeah, and really, if I recall
but I mean, even
correctly,
if you're talking, even like we're talking about stealing, Arthur Conan Doyle. Could Arthur Conan Doyle have done what he did without Edgar Allan Poe setting it all up?
Mm. Oh yeah, I mean, it's as that old saying goes. There's only, every single work in fiction is just a remake of the same three basic story ideas: man versus man versus self, and man versus nature.
Yep.
That's all they are.
Mm-hmm.
I also read somewhere that there's like 8 different types of stories in fiction.
There have
There's
been
like
various different ways to boil it down to basic stories, but yeah, it's the same.
And actually, this IP law, ironically, is actually hurting Disney because, the reason why Disney did so well was because they had this huge entire public domain of fairy tales and other folklore that they could take and make their own version from. But because Disney has uber strict IP laws, it's like, okay, what movie can we make now? Oh, let's make a movie based off of this story. We don't own the rights to it. What about this one? Don't own the rights to it. What about this one? Don't own the rights to it. Don't own the rights to it.
It's Disney's fault too, because they're the ones that lobbied for all the strict IP regulation.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I think it was
Walt Disney himself was a pretty statist SOB, and I mean he willingly complied with things like Operation Paperclip and all that.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's pretty funny about how Gaming Wildlife did a What If Disney Was on with us, and they're like, so we lobbied to have government expand where not only would the copyright protect as long as the creator lived, but 75 years after his death. And there's no doubt that 75 years from now, when that happens, we're gonna lobby the government to expand it even further.
Admitted copyright is just monopoly privileges. Yep, that's all it is. Same with patents. Yep.
Manny, you better be joking about the Rothschilds, because I get so sick of people bringing up the Rothschilds.
Actually, Rainbow, you don't even have to copyright the drawing. As soon as you finish a drawing, you automatically have a copyright on it, and no one else can use it without your permission. You don't have to fill out any forms. You don't have to. I mean, it helps if you want to. If you're intending on enforcing it later, do something to prove you have it now. But, I mean, legally, as soon as you put something in tangible form, as soon as I finish saying the words that I'm saying right now, they are copyrighted and no one else can use them without my permission. It's
pretty funny because, people are going to be like that. They're going to be like, oh, but without copyright, what's going to stop people from stealing from one another? And going back to what you said, that already happens. But also, Joe Rogan brought this up one time when he was talking about, it's like, look at comedy. You can't copyright comedy. You can't do that. But yet, if you're caught stealing a joke, and it's clearly, you're trying to pass it off as your own, and you're not saying, and this is so much like that, they will call you out for it. They'll say, hey, you're stealing from this one guy.
Yeah. Yeah, Joseph, I have no idea why people think ANCAPs are for intellectual property. It's crazy. Because I think that was one of the things in one of those quizzes I was doing. I think it was the Are You a Communist quiz, and it asked the question about IP. And I think being against IP is one of the things that made me 10% commie.
Yeah, which is stupid because, people talk about how it's like, yeah, but, ANCAPs believe in property rights and aren't, your drawings like that. It's like, well, yeah, the physical drawing you drew is your property, but the idea of what you drew is not quote unquote property, because, and the truth be told, given by statistical evidence, there's a pretty good chance that what you thought of, it's probably possible that someone else thought of already. They just didn't write it down because they either couldn't draw it or they just weren't interested in it. It's just.
And you're talking about CC0, Rainbow. I really like that, and I have some, like, if you look on GitHub and places like that, there's some scripts I've written, because CC0 works for code as well as anything else. I release that. But the weird thing is, like, if I do a reaction video, or if I do, the podcast where I'm, quoting from other places, there's a real problem if I tried to make those CC0, because if I'm using someone else's material, I don't have their permission to put it in the public domain, which is what CC0 is. And so I kind of have to do a, Creative Commons non-commercial thing to because I'm using material that isn't my own. Even though it's supposed to be fair use, it's just the weird legalities we're in.
Yeah, JC Armitage, Amy Schumer's career stealing jokes, and she's not even good at it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I can tolerate people stealing jokes if they're good at it, but guys like Carlos Mencia and Amy Schumer, yeah, it's like Amy Schumer, you just suck, period, and Carlos Mencia, all you're doing is just taking a Latino spin on already popular jokes. It's not creative.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if you tell your retold jokes and you're funny, I mean that's fine because, like I said, great artists steal.
I mean, look at Gilbert Gottfried. That guy, like on paper, almost all of his jokes are bad, but it's the delivery, because of his voice and all that, and how he's just so over the top, especially his Aristocrats joke. Because, like I said, on paper, the Aristocrats isn't a funny joke, but he just says it in such an over the top and vile way that you just can't help but laugh.
Well, the classic comedy routine, Abbott and Costello, who's on first? Read the script on it. It is not funny. It is not funny. It's tell me who. Okay, who's on first? Right, the guy on first. Who? And stuff like that. It's like that's not funny, but it's how they delivered it and their timing and their back and forth with it. It is just so hilarious.
I will say, I'm into music, and one attempt to make the "Who's on First" joke that didn't work was Animaniacs, because they were doing it with a band, and Slappy the Squirrel was like, "Who's on the stage? Who? No, that's what I'm asking. Who's on the stage? Who's on stage?" And I'm like, no. The band is called The Who, not Who. It's The Who. You have to put a "the" in there, or else nobody's gonna know what the hell you're talking about.
So Shane, how bad do you think this whole Corona thing is actually going to turn out to be?
I don't know. It's not going to be Armageddon. We're not going to be in Mad Max
wait till the next
territory.
podcast.
But yeah, I'm not going to make any predictions of it because my answer to that is always, I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball.
Yeah.
It all depends. Because, see, people are looking at the exponential growth, which is what you get from the RNL, and how it just keeps going up, up, up. That's not how these outbreaks and everything's work. There's a plateau, and then it goes up. It's more like a bell curve. And so it all depends on when you hit the peak of that bell curve. It looks like China's already hit it. We might still be approaching it, but I don't know.
Yeah, it's...
My grandmother has been telling people that it's the end of the world.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, David, that's exactly what they're talking about with IP. It's property, and ANCAPs are into property. So, but the thing is, it's not property. It's just being referred to as property.
Yeah, I mean... Like I said earlier, if you physically draw something and you have a physical painting, the physical painting is your property, but the idea of the painting isn't. So that's a funny thing.
I could paint my own version. Van Gogh's Starry Night is public domain anyway, but if it weren't, I could still paint my own version of it, and as long as it's not an exact duplicate, then I should be pretty safe.
Well, hang on, even if you try and paint an exact duplicate by hand, it's going to have mistakes and errors because you're not a machine.
But I mean, that was actually a problem, in the Middle Ages. People would make copies of paintings and try to go and sell them, and there was no way to legally stop them.
Well, as long as you're not trying to pass it off as an original, I don't see any problem with that.
Yeah, but that's what they were doing. They were trying to say this is the actual one.
That's fraud because they're lying about who made it.
Well,
exactly,
that's
you don't need IP law to protect against that. It's fraud.
I mean, by the way, I was watching. Speaking of fraud, I was watching a video by John Stossel that was talking about how crazy rules can be sometimes. And apparently, from what I've heard, if you're playing hooky because, you haven't had a day off in over a year, so you call into work and you say, yeah, I'm going to be out of work for a couple weeks because I caught the coronavirus, but you're really just going on vacation and partying in secret. Apparently, if they discover you're bluffing, that's technically considered wire fraud, and the feds can arrest you.
Yeah, Joseph, slavery is another thing they do because you treat a person as property, even though a person cannot logically be property, and say, well, you want slavery. It's like, shut up.
Yeah. The funny irony is that if I recall correctly, that was what the whole slavery debacle was about. It was about, it's like, well, on one hand, yes, they're slaves, but are they also property? And it was basically them arguing, well, they have to be property. Well, but they're human beings, but they're property, but they're human beings, and I guess nobody taught them the laws of first principles.
Rainbow, why do you put completed works under no derivatives? I only do that with the podcast. The regular videos are share alike. But the no derivatives with the podcast is because I'm doing multiple different stories from multiple different sources, and yeah, I've really got to protect myself if someone tries to make a derivative work from that, and then the original copyright holder tries to come after me for that. So that's the reason for the no derivative. I'm not going to come after anyone. I am not suing anyone for copyright. Take all my stuff, do whatever you want to it, but I don't legally own the things that I'm reacting to and the things I'm quoting and the things I'm showing. That's someone else's copyrights that, you know, they might well enforce, and the government will be on their side with that. So I have to protect myself on that, but I'm not going to come after anyone else. Do whatever you want with my stuff.
IP is modern guild politics. Actually, IP goes all the way back to places like the medieval period, you know, when those powerful printing guilds, you know, they were the ones that first proposed copyright, which is, oh, you know, the people who are writing this stuff, they can't, you know, do it. We own it because we're the publishers.
Yeah, but then it got to where printing presses could be more easily obtained, and authors were starting to publish their own books, and that's when they ran to government to try and get copyright so that only the publishers could publish
Yeah,
books.
actually, if I recall correctly, you know, back in the medieval days, if you had access to one of those printing press that was able to mass print papers, you could actually be severely punished for it. In fact, in some parts of Russia, you could even be killed for owning one.
Which is kind of what they're doing now with a lot of modern file sharing tools. They want to put people, you know, in jail just for using BitTorrent or whatever.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, like what they did to Russ Ulbricht, you know, and what they're going to do to Julian Assange, you know.
Well, that's the thing,
posted-
Joseph makes a good point. People want to support the original artist. So, yeah, if there were no copyrights, anyone who wanted to could republish Harry Potter or sell their own Harry Potter stories. But the Harry Potter fans are going to want the stuff from J.K. Rowling. They might enjoy the other stuff, too, the way they enjoy fan fiction today. But they really want the J.K. Rowling, and that's what they're going to consider, you know, official in the canon and everything.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. People like to make fun of fan fiction and all that, but the funny irony is that some of the biggest, you know, stories in the world could arguably be fan fiction.
Yeah.
I mean, hell, you know, Sword in the Stone by Disney, that's just a fan movie of, you know, the Arthurian legends.
Yeah, Denialist, you're talking about those family photos. The way it works is whoever takes the picture owns it. Whoever hits the button. Someone else could like set up the camera and make all of the settings and the shutters and the exposure and set up the lighting and everything. If someone else runs up and hits the button to actually take the picture, that person owns that picture. Now, you have, when you have people involved, you have subject rights too. You have the rights to your own image. When you went to do that, you signed away your rights to that. So you no longer have the subject rights in that photo. It's
actually, Shane, I think I read something where something like that actually happened, where there was a couple, they took photos, you know, they were given photos taken and they posted them on their social media, and the print photographer came out and said, "Hey, you can't do that. You can't do that. You know, those are my photos. You can't do that. You know, because you didn't pay for them yet, so, you know, you have no right to post them." 50 Shades of Grey started out as a Twilight fanfiction. I don't think that's a good example, David. I mean, some people like it, but most would agree that's kind of fringe, but, you know. And it's pretty funny because, you know, a lot of people are like, you know, oh, but, you know, there's all these fan fictions where they're making Harry Potter and Draco Malfoy kiss and all that. It's like, you know what? Historically speaking, that's always been the case. There's always been crappy people out there that wrote really, really bad stuff, and we just forget about that. It's called, what was that called again? Someone's Law or something?
Sturgeon's Law.
Yeah.
Theodore Sturgeon.
Yep. Yeah, Theodore Sturgeon. Yep, apparently it's everything is art, and 90% of that art is crap.
But BitTorrent isn't just a tool of Crime Zero, because, I mean, imagine something like a Linux distribution, and they have, you know, this huge ISO that they want people to download. how are they going to afford the bandwidth if they can send it through BitTorrent, which most of them do? And I mean, you can still download it, and there are mirrors that you can get it through and things like that. All sorts of things to save them the bandwidth. But that's what BitTorrent does. While you're downloading it, you're sharing it, the bandwidth, with others. And so, you can actually host these things for a lot more cheaper than there are plenty of legitimate reasons to use BitTorrent that have nothing to do with crimes.
I got a VPN so I can use BitTorrent in peace.
Oh yeah, I like to go on tour every now and then and see what you can do. It's pretty funny because someone was posting this article about how there were even some anti-gun people that were saying, just because of what's all been going on with the corona and all that, I might buy a shotgun or something, for personal defense. And they discover, oh wait, you can't just go online and buy a gun. It's like, yeah, they're like, yeah,
You voted for that crap, remember?
Yeah. Actually, think I saw a YouTube video about that one time. I think there was a YouTube video of a person from a European continent state that had stricter gun laws, and she was trying to prove how easy it was to buy guns in the U.S. And she was shocked to find out I can't buy anything because every time I go to a place and say I want to buy a gun, they're like, "Okay, which gun? I want that one. Okay, let me get the paperwork." Wait, you have to file paperwork? Yeah, you have to file paperwork. But this is America. I thought all you had to do was just present money and go away with your gun. No, you gotta file paperwork. We gotta do a background check. We gotta check your ID and all that. They're like, oh.
Gun show loophole.
No, this is an FFL deal. This isn't a private sale.
Yeah, Zero has confirmed that was a typo. He wanted to say BitTorrent isn't a tool of crime.
Yeah. It's pretty funny that they even call it pirates because, because the thing is, you're not a pirate, because pirates of the old day, they actually were committing a crime because they were stealing physical property, but people copying a movie and watching it.
Originally what they were doing was smuggling in items that weren't allowed, because they competed with, whoever the mercantilist monopoly was, and that's what John Hancock was accused of piracy on the high seas and smuggling, because he was smuggling in tea without paying the tax, and the tea wasn't from the East India Company. And
yep. By the way, Shane, going back to the Second Amendment debate, there's actually quite a few people that are trying to say, oh, America is having the right to keep and bear arms. That's not won the Revolutionary War. The militias got their asses whooped. It was actually France that saved America from the Revolutionary War. It's
the arbitrary difference. But the arbitrary difference between personal and private property is making profit, aka actually getting something out of it. Well, I get something out of my personal property. I get enjoyment out of it.
Did you hear what I said, Shane? Or
yeah, I'm just trying to catch up with the chat.
Oh, okay. Yeah, but I did my own fair share of research of the Revolutionary War, and while yes, the French did help out, it wasn't like they were doing the fighting. Basically, what they did was they sold us guns and powder, and they loaned us their navy. That's what they did.
They did a lot of the fighting, but I don't think they contributed that many in terms of like the foot soldiers. I think it was like the mid-level commanders.
Yeah, they sent us a few commanders to help train our armies, and again, they also loaned us, some of their navy. And even then, they didn't do that until it became clear that the colonies actually stood a chance of winning, because you don't want to support a group that isn't going to win, because then the British are going to say, hey, why did you fund these rebels? We're going to go after you next. Yeah,
I mean, what we call pirates today, at the time were called privateers, and if you look at the people they called pirates, we would call them terrorists.
Yeah, that's the funny thing that a lot of those movies don't mention, is that like 80% of the pirates of the sea during the golden age of pirates, they were actually sanctioned by the state. They had a letter of marque that said, okay, we're at war with Spain or France, so if you come across a Spanish or a French ship, feel free to attack them and take whatever they have. As long as you share a small portion of it with us, we'll let you keep it.
But look at the Barbary pirates, and tell me if they're really any different than the modern Muslim extremist terrorists. I mean, they had different technology available to them, but that's basically what they were.
Oh yeah. People always like to talk about how whites were never enslaved by a group. The Barbary pirates, they were known to enslave white people, and apparently, from what I read,
They're-
whites,
like,
white,
Most
white,
of their entire job was just enslaving.
yeah,
Oh, Arabs throughout history, and I think even today, it enslaved people, far worse than Europeans did, and treated their slaves
Yeah.
far more horribly than Europeans did.
And by the way, one cringy thing that Family Guy once did is they were talking about the history, and they were showing Peter's black ancestor, and they portray him as being kidnapped and sold by a white guy. That didn't happen. The majority of black slaves who were sold into slavery, they were captured by other blacks,
In
black war
Africa,
chiefs,
yeah.
who sold them to the Europeans and later the Americans.
Because Africa had slaves. Everywhere in the world had slaves for thousands of years. People seem to
Yeah.
have this idea that, around the Middle Ages or the late Renaissance period, Europe got this idea, hey, why don't we take these black people and keep them as slaves? That's a completely new and original idea. No, it goes all the way back to the Code of Ernamu.
Yeah. I mean, heck, even, before medieval periods, one could even argue, feudalism and serfdom was in a form of slavery because, basically the mentality was, oh, you don't own the land you live on. Everything belongs to the god who entrusted it to the king, so therefore it's the king's and not yours.
Agara says your car can be made a means of production at any moment. Yeah, I've tried pinning Ancoms down on this. I like to use hammers because you can use a hammer to repair your own house or to repair someone else's for profit. So really, what's the difference?
Is communism even possible without a state?
No, because as soon as you try to enforce it, you formed a state.
But fun fact, Shane, that actually did happen. I read somewhere there was a commune in Russia, and it started out as a pure Ancon society. It was going to be a commune. Everything was going to be communally owned. You couldn't have profit, but it was also going to be an anarchist state. And what happened is that people slowly began buying and trading, and they became capitalists. And the militia like, well, they're not being communists, but if we try to do something, we'll be a state. So we have to, and they ultimately said, well, we're anarchists first and communists second. And if this is what the people want, we'll let it be. And finally, Lenin figured out what they were doing. And he's like, no, you got to go in and you got to stop them because they're not being communists.
Elias asks, how do you deal with pedophilia in an ANCAP system? It's a form of aggression, so you just use, I mean, children generally can't defend themselves, but it's not just about you can defend yourself. You can also defend anyone else against an act of aggression. So if you see, a fully grown woman being raped, you can intercede on her behalf and stop the rapist or shoot the rapist or whatever. It's the same thing if it's a child.
Yeah, whereas in a state society, you save the woman, but then the police are taking her away, and it's like, wait a minute, what are you taking me away for? For assault and disorderly conduct? But I just saved this woman from being raped. Yeah, but you weren't supposed to do that. You're supposed to call the police.
I know they do that. In the last season, the previous season, I should say, of Ray Donovan, one of the characters has a job at, I think it's a convenience store or something like that, and someone tries to rob the convenience store and to threaten everyone with a gun, and he uses the gun to stop them. And I mean, it makes the news, and he's this big hero and everything, but the store says, well, we got to fire you. And he's like, why? I stopped it. It's like, yeah, but you're not supposed to do that. You're just supposed to just let him do it and then call the police and just let him take him and run away. And so they fired him. And so he put a mask on, ran back in, and robbed the place.
Yeah.
Well, they're not going to stop him, so why not?
Well, in all honesty, the thing I hate, this is one thing I did hate about being a driver is that we flat out said, no, you're not allowed to defend yourself. And I was like, so let's say, hypothetically speaking, I was robbed on the job and I did fight back. Would I be fired? And they're like, chances are yes. And they're like, well, why? Well, you're supposed to just sit in and remember that. And I'm like, well, look, it's not even the fact that, it's probably non-lethal. It's the principle, because here's the thing. If I don't put up a fight, even if I just report it, there's no guarantee the cops are going to follow through with the report anyway. What's going to happen? He's going to walk away with like 20, 30 bucks. And, he might be showing it to his friend, and his friend's like, dude, you got 20, 30 bucks. How'd you do that? He's like, oh, I robbed the pizza delivery guy. Did he put up a fight? No, he bent over, gave me everything I wanted. I got a free pizza. I got 30 bucks, everything. And they're going to be like, hey, maybe I'll start doing that. You
Yep.
know, whereas if you pull a gun on him and he runs away, you know, it's gonna be like, oh, you robbed the pizza delivery guy. Did you get anything good? He's like, hell no, that guy had a gun on him. I'm not gonna risk that. But no, you know, and in all honesty, I think part of the problem with that is because a lot of businesses are required to buy insurance. So a lot of businesses are like, oh well, who cares? Who cares if we get robbed? The insurance will pay for it. Whereas if they weren't paying for it, there'd be a much greater incentive to let their employees defend themselves because nobody's going to pay for it if it happens. You know,
Hang on. People wonder why reporting of crime that stopped with firearms is so sparse.
Oh, Pikachu came in at some point. I'm sorry, I missed that. Hello, Pikachu.
I think he's muted or something. But yeah, as you were saying, Pitsqueak, you know, people are, as Shane pointed out, and I think there actually was an actual study that found this, and it found the reason why we don't hear about people, defending themselves, we don't hear about crimes that were stopped with firearms is because when you think about it, most people don't report it. They don't call the cops and say, yeah, some guy tried to rob me, but I pulled a gun and he ran away. Most people just go to work and, they're like, hey, how's your day going? It's like, I don't know. Some crazy guy jumped me, tried to jump me, and I scared him off.
Southern Anarchist, when seconds count, the police are usually an hour away longer in places like Detroit. Yeah, long ago there was this rap song. It's called something like 911 is a Joke, which basically is based on the fact that if you're in this, upper class white neighborhood, you call 911, the police are there in like 5 or 10 minutes. If you're in the ghetto or, some kind of, high crime, low income black neighborhood, you call them, they might show up in 3 or 4 hours.
Yeah. Actually, Shane, there was a thing I saw about Detroit one time where a guy went down there to Detroit and he showed how slow it was. He was with a woman, and when they came back to her place, they found out that her windows had been broken and someone tried to rob her. So they called the cops to file a report, and they said, okay, they're on their way. So they sat there waiting. 10 minutes passed, no cops. 20 minutes, no cops. 30 minutes passed, no cops. And the guy's like, I'm getting kind of hungry. I'm going to run to McDonald's. Do you want anything from McDonald's? And she says, oh yeah, sure. Get me a Whopper and a tea, but with no ice. So he went over there, got her meal. But when he got back, it's like, oh, there's ice in my iced tea, and I don't like ice in my tea. And he's like, oh, I'll take it back. And he took it back. And told them, hey, you gave me ice in this tea, but she didn't want iced tea. She just wanted tea. And they're like, oh, I'm sorry. They gave him a free one. And he got back. Still no cops.
Yeah.
It wasn't until the evening that they finally showed up. And even then it was just one, and he didn't really care. He was basically just like, okay, tell me what happened. And she's like, well, here's what happened. He's like, okay, thank you, ma'am. And then he just left. And that's another thing, too. Even if the police do arrive on the scene, like when the crime's in progress, as we saw with, the Florida shooting, there's no guarantee they're actually going to step in there and intervene. It's not like in the movies.
No require.
It's not
there
like
have been quite a few Supreme Court cases where they've basically ruled that the police have no requirement to protect individuals. They only have a requirement to protect the public order by enforcing rules.
They protect communities somehow by not having the duty to protect the people who make up the community.
It's not like in the action movies, like where a guy pulls out an AK-47 and he goes around shooting everything up, and the first cop who arrives, pulls out his gun and he heroically tries to say, put the gun down right now, and he does that because that would never happen. In fact, in many cases, a lot of cops, when they arrive on the scene of something like that, they're told, okay, what do I do now? The guy's going around killing people. Okay, here's what you got to do. Sit tight and wait for backup. And then when backup arrives, it's like, okay, what do we got to do? Okay, sit tight and wait for more backup. More backup arrives. Okay, what do we do? Okay, secure perimeter, then wait for backup. Then that backup arrives, and they're told, assist with the perimeter and wait for SWAT. And by that point, the guy's reloaded, had a cup of coffee, and watched the first season of Game of Thrones and gone back to killing people. Yeah, actually, I was talking to some Norwegian some Norwegian friends of mine one time, and they had that one mass shooting in 2011. And the reason why the guy got away with killing so many people was because there were people calling the police, saying, hey, there's these kids on an island. There's this crazy guy going around shooting them. And what the guy Anders Breivik did is he set off a bomb in Oslo as a distraction, and basically, the politicians are saying, "Oh no, you can't go to that island to save those kids. You need to stay." They told the Delta team, which is their equivalent of SWAT, you need to stay in Oslo and look for bombs. It's like, well, we don't see any bombs. Well, there might be bombs. You need to go there. It's like, but we've got kids that are being massacred. And the politicians were like, no, you got to stay here and protect us. And when they did finally get deployed, they were told, it's on an island, and the government gave them a helicopter, which was too big to land on the island. So they had to fly back and commandeer a boat and get on the island. The moral of the story is, people, don't assume, you don't have to do anything because we have police, because like we said earlier, the police are minutes away, and even if by some miracle they do get in the scene on time, they're under no obligation to interfere and save you.
Yeah, they're just there to take down the information and file it and all that.
Yeah, they're not there to protect a woman from being strangled with her own panties. They're down there to say, okay, we've got a body here. Looks like a woman. She's been strangled with her own panties. I'm going to secure the scene and wait for forensics.
Yep. Call the
That's all it
coroner to
is.
come take pictures of everything and
Yep.
dust for prints and take DNA. Yep. That's what they're doing. They're mopping up after.
And actually, Shane, I don't know if it's true or not, but I've actually heard a reason why a lot of those cop movies portrayed the cop as being renegade was because, from what I read, there were actual cops that were complaining about that, that they were trying to actually do their jobs as cops, but the government was saying, oh no, you can't do that. You got to enforce these traffic laws and all that. It's like, we should be, and a lot of the cops are saying, no, we should be out on the street, protecting the people from robbers, murderers, and rapists. But they're like, nope, you got to enforce these arbitrary laws that nobody cares about. That's why a lot of those action movie police officers got invented, because it was those people venting their frustrations that the cops weren't allowed to do anything.
Hello.
That's the problem with the system. Even if your police department, even if the majority of your police department are legitimately good cops and good people, because they're ruled by politicians, they can't do their job properly.
Was that you, Pikachu, saying hello?
Yep.
Hey, how you doing?
Doing fine. How about you all?
Got anything you want to talk about?
No, I'm just here to listen and be a snoop.
Okay, that's fine.
Hey, Pikachu, are you from Australia too?
Well, I'm not actually.
Oh.
From where?
What's up?
Where are you from?
I was born, well, I live in California, obviously. And my parents are from, Asia, yeah. So, yeah. I know my deep voice is in, huh?
Yeah.
Oh, it just reminds me of this funny thing, where like this skit I saw one time where these two guys are looking at this one American angrily, and the guy's like, "What? What did I do? Was it so offensive? What? You put a Scottish guy next to an Australian guy, and I can't tell the difference." Yeah. Well, to be fair, there's actually a reason why a lot of Australians have Scottish/Irish, accents. That's because a lot of them are descendants from Scottish and Irish criminals that were exiled to Australia by the British Empire.
I think someone probably from my dad's side is probably Australian somewhere. I don't know.
Yeah, there's no denying that if you take, an ancestry survey of a lot of Australian people, they're probably going to have some criminals in their ancestry.
Wouldn't surprise me one bit.
Yeah, Zero, we talked a bit about COVID-19, but that might have been previously when things weren't working. I stopped the stream and restarted it, but I mean, you should be able to back that up. Hopefully the audio made it through at least.
Basically what Shane said, because he said this several times already, is that, it's overrated, it's overblown, and he's not really going to talk about a whole lot till next Bogosity, because I'm pretty sure there's some government agencies that got biggest Bog animator/idiot extraordinaire for it.
Maybe not. It'll probably be just news of the bogus. I'm not sure yet, but yeah, I want to talk about them now. I mean, it is a problem, and you do want to take precautions. So, please take reasonable precautions to protect yourself and your family and keep it from spreading.
Yeah, but don't pull. Sorry.
Don't put the inflatable dome over the cities.
Yeah.
Oh, don't remind me.
But keep the hands washed. Use hand sanitizer.
Why did I forget his name? I was about to say, don't pull a Howard on each other.
Don't pull a what?
A what?
Howard Hughes. I can't believe I forgot his name.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he was for those that don't know, he was a rich American entrepreneur who, he was a good entrepreneur, and especially when it came to making planes and all that, but near the end of his life, he went a little crazy, and anyone who saw The Aviator knows he spent his final days of his life hiding out in his apartment.
He was basically a recluse, yeah.
Apparently he let his hair grow, he let his nails grow, he wore shoeboxes, and apparently he didn't even wear clothes because he was so prone to sensory overload that wearing clothes hurt him.
But they're saying with COVID-19, the best thing to do is stay in your home as much as possible, interact with people, over the internet, and try not to go out. And for some of us, that won't be that much of a change.
Yeah.
It's like, I have been preparing for this moment my entire life.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me like when they were saying, it's like, oh, if you don't want to get COVID-19, you got to wash your hands and all. And I'm thinking, you should be doing that whether there's an outbreak or not.
People are disgusting.
Day 5, we discovered hygiene.
Yeah, I know.
Zero. Neither one is a hoax. Climate change isn't a hoax, but all the stuff about, oh, well, it's going to, cause, Armageddon by, 2040 or whatever the word is. Yeah, I mean, it's a cause for concern, but it's not, Chicken Little, the sky is falling type thing.
Yeah.
And all we need to do to fix it is go over to nuclear power, which is the one thing they won't do. I was like, well, the most important issue is climate change, and nothing else even comes close. We have to put everything on the back burner. Don't talk about anything else. Climate change. That's the biggest one. Well, okay, then why don't we move over to nuclear power? No, nuclear, but this is a big issue. We can't do nuclear. But you just said that climate change was the biggest issue.
We tried nothing, and it ain't working.
Yeah, it's that, well, we got to do something fallacy. If I was president and they told me, but Mr. President, you can't sit in the White House. You got to do something. I'm going to, then I'm going to do the chicken dance, and they're going to be like, what did you just do? I just did something about climate change. Doing the chicken dance isn't going to stop climate change. Yeah, but I did something.
Yeah, well, neither is a lot of the stuff they're proposing. And the chicken dance won't cause damage to the economy and a lot of people.
Yeah.
Elias is asking about a scenario, a guy wants to kill someone and claims he got attacked first. Well, I mean, that happens now anyway, but what you're talking about is not the principles of the NAP, but it's an issue of investigation, of finding out what really happened. That doesn't mean he was right for doing it, but of course, just like in any other system, it's possible to fool people and get away with it.
Yeah.
Well, if he's not being attacked, he doesn't have the right to just go over and shoot someone.
Yeah,
I like that. David R. David R. said climate alarmism is more the hoax. I like that, saying alarmism.
Yeah, alarmism. It's like, that's why I hated that episode of South Park with Man Bear Pig, because it's like, look, just because we know Man Bear Pig is real does not mean Al Gore was right, because people forget Al Gore said a lot of stuff. Like he said, by like 2050, California would be underwater and this and that, and even the environmental scientists that believe in man-made global warming, even they agreed, no, that's not what we said.
There was one point where he was like in New York giving a talk, and he was saying about, and see how warm it's been, this winter here in January and February. That's proof of global warming. And first of all, the scientists said, no, that's not how it works. And two, those 2 months ended up being two of the coldest months on record. So it's like, stop doing that.
Curb your enthusiasm theme.
Yeah, and Shane, and I will say, Shane, that South Park episode with Man Bear Pig Returns, the one thing that made me facepalm was when that one guy said, well, yeah, so Man Bear Pig does exist, but even if we do something about it, what's going to stop China and other people from doing that? And it's like, oh, that's just a cop-out. No, that's a legitimate argument, because, like, everyone seems to be ranting and raving about, why isn't the U.S. doing this? Why isn't it doing that?
We're already exceeding the requirements that we would have been under if we'd signed on to the Paris Accord.
We are the cleanest. We are one of the cleanest nations on the planet, you know, I mean, that's the
Yeah.
reason why, you know, it's pretty funny because everyone criticized the United States for leaving the Paris Climate Accord, but a lot of people pointed out, you know, if you actually read it, basically it was more or less saying we'll just do something, and if it doesn't work, we'll blame America for it because
Yeah,
Well,
basically.
each individual country that went into the Paris Accord wrote up their own requirements,
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
and half of them aren't even following them.
yeah,
And-
like if I recall correctly, China's policy was going to be, well, we're going to promise to be more efficient and not as polluting, 50
But-
years from now, which one guy said, that's basically like saying, okay, I eat way too much and I'm gaining weight, so here's my pledge. Instead of cutting my calories and losing weight, instead of gaining 20 pounds, next year, I'm only going to gain 15.
I
then you say,
promise to
"Hey, I
gain
lost 5
weight
pounds."
10%. I promise to gain weight at a 10% less rate that I currently am doing now.
Yeah.
That's not
That
helpful.
that derivative, man.
Something
Yeah.
Anarchist is asking if Andrew Yang wants a resource-based economy. I don't care, and I think he's irrelevant. I don't really.
What is a resource-based? I don't know what that means.
It's basically an economy, man.
It's one of those buzzwords I think like the Venus Project people use and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's pretty funny because earlier someone was talking about anarcho-syndicalists and all that. It's because, and they're so, contradictory because they're like, oh, we have a market that's ruled by corporations, but, we want, a market that's run by, union guilds and all that. And I'm just thinking that's more or less what a corporation is.
Yep.
It's like, do these socialists and syndicalists not realize what a corporation is? It's like they act like a corporation is this thing that magically appears when people get enough money. No, it's a legal title you're given.
Yep. And all sorts of legal protections. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the reason why, you can't sue a corporation isn't because, oh, they have money and all the resources in the world. No, it's because they're legally protected from criminal and stuff like that to a degree because of the limited liability law.
Yeah. All right, we got like
I mean, that's the funny
6
irony is
minutes
that
left. Okay, go ahead.
I was about to say that's the funny irony is that in an ANCAP society, it actually would be easier to punish big companies like that because they wouldn't have all that legal jargon you'd have to go through. If they were caught doing something really stupid and hurting their customers, it'd be much easier to call them out and punish them because people wouldn't shop there.
Yes, we're promising not to eat all the chocolates. Yeah, that's socialism in a nutshell.
Yep.
Well, if we would
I mentioned this earlier, but I think this was when the stream was messing up. But Pyotr Kropotkin, when people asked him, well, if people don't get paid, why would they work? Oh, well, they would just want to work because people enjoy working. How many people are going to enjoy working in a sewer cleaning it out?
Yeah. Yeah, not eating all the chocolates. That actually reminds me of a funny comic one time. He was like a libertarian comic, and he was like, when the government always talks about making budget cuts, here's how it is. It's like a fat person saying, okay, I'm eating way too much, so here's the deal. Instead of eating the 60-pound bag of candy, I'm only going to eat the 30-pound bag of candy.
Yep.
That's how government discuss budget cuts,
We cut 20 pounds.
Yeah.
Yeah, by doing something they mean the thing they want to do.
It's not even that. It's like saying like I promise I'll only eat 2 slices of pizza and just cutting the pizza in half.
Yeah.
There was this thing on the Electric Company, the show that was on PBS when I was a kid. The guy wanted a cake, and his mom said, "You can only have 1 slice of cake." I was like, "Okay, I'm going to have 1 piece of cake," and he cuts out a slice. And he takes the rest of the cake. I'm only taking 1 piece.
It's not. It was so. It reminds me at the time when I was back at school where we had like you can only take 1 piece of dessert or 1 piece of dessert or fruit, and then they forgot to like cut the entire cake. So and then this like one person just took the entire piece of cake, and it's like, hey, it's only 1 piece. This is 1 piece.
Yeah. Just pray that Principal Churchbull didn't make him eat a second, even larger piece of cake in front of everyone.
There's on one of the Asterix comics. There's a joke about that. there's like a cake that's poisoned or something, and they want to prove that it's not poisoned. So like Asterix Obelix, cut the cake into 3 pieces. And it's like, okay, 1, 2, there you go. It takes like the big part.
I love Asterix.
Yeah,
I love the names of all the characters. The guy selling fish is unhygienics.
kind of reminds me. I actually saw a Robot Chicken skit like that, where a kindergarten teacher is teaching kids how to count, and she's like, so there's 12 cookies and 6 of you. That means you each get 2 cookies. Yay! And they all eat them. And in about 30 seconds, we're going to find out which one of you ate the poisoned cookie. Yay! Yeah.
Are you sure about that? Because I think one of us is going to get 12 cookies. Next thing you know, it's only like...
Yeah. Actually, Shane, speaking of school, one of the funniest things ever, I was assigned this compilation of funniest test answer ever, and there was one question that said it was for a philosophy class, and it says, "Give an example of a risk," and the kid just wrote down this answer, and he got it correct. And he got it correct. The teacher actually complimented, saying, "Yep, that is a risk."
Yep. All right, 1 minute left. Everyone, get your final thoughts out.
Oh, 1 more minute. Quickly, Pipsqueak, let's get our Lee Enfields out. Gotta make the Germans think we're firing machine guns.
It's very funny.
Anything to say, Pikachu, before we go?
Nope.
Okay. What about Tiaga Fair, however it's pronounced? I'm sorry, I butchered that.
I mean, there's... I want to say one thing, but...
Go ahead.
It's just...
One thing. Yeah.
One thing. Going back to the topic of copyright, I don't know. I've been wanting to say this for a while. Since you don't believe in copyright, I'll just say, stay strong and be free.
Hey, you stole that.
Porky Pig, is that you? Well, believe that's all, folks. I can't do it. Yeah.
What you're actually trying to do, people get this wrong. They think he's stuttering on saying that. He's trying to say the end, and he can't say it, and so he says that's all, folks. So the proper way to do it is the end. That's all, folks.
Or my personal favorite, boom, boom, bang! Oh, son of a bit, a gun.
Gun. Yeah.
Yeah.
You thought I was gonna say bitch, didn't you?
Yeah. You thought I was gonna say son of a bitch, didn't you?
Yep.
Yeah, apparently that was a real Porky Pig skit, and they would show that, in the rec room just to get a laugh.
Yeah, it wasn't part of a cartoon. It was just a little thing they did because they knew they'd never be allowed to do stuff like that.
Yeah, apparently the Disney animators did stuff like that too, but they're lost because the Disney family was very strict on that. So
they would try sneaking in like one frame of something dirty or something. All right, have fun, everyone.
Never pause a Disney movie.
Yeah. I'm glad the stream finally worked, so maybe we've got settings that'll keep working.
Can I say something real quick?
Sure, go ahead.
I'd just like to say taxation is theft. All gun laws are infringement, and we're going to make it through Corona.
And if we're going to do all that, then we might as well remind everyone of their 1,000-year right as jurors to decide the law as well as the facts in any case that comes before them. We'll see you next month. Stay strong and be free.